The sexual miseducation of black men in America. It explores and explains the psychological, emotional, behavioral, and relational. The sexual miseducation of black men in America. It explores and explains the psychological, emotional, behavioral, and relational impact that our sexual conditioning has had on us as black men. For far too long, we have allowed one of the smallest organs on our body to have the most control over our lives. In this book, we will explore the impact that our sexual miseducation has had on every part of our lives as black men. We will re-educate the next generation of men on how to value themselves by teaching them real ways of measuring their manhood and combating the notion that their manhood is based on the number of women that they sleep with or how well they perform in the bedroom. The sexual miseducation of black men in America will help parents in our community understand what it will take to grow their prince into the position of king. We will assist black men with overcoming one of the biggest struggles that we are faced with. That is the temptation of casual and meaningless sex. This alone has stopped millions of us from living up to our full potential. The sexual miseducation of black men in America. It's coming.
And mainly the unhealthy sexual habits that we learn, the unhealthy sexual lessons that we learn as black men. A lot of it affects us in so many different ways, psychologically, behaviorally, emotionally.
The act of sex in, 5th or 6th grade in health class, they start to talk to you about what sex is.
I tell her he loved her when he didn't really love her, right? And so what I took from that was, I'm never going to say those words unless I mean it.
End up being with this chick. She might just be a one-nighter and that's it. So we don't get out that stage until we like older. I mean, it's sad, but it's realistic.
It's almost like slowly pushing all the other people out, because at one time we all have multiple chicks here, there, and the other way.
He didn't explain nothing or nothing. He just stopped hitting her up on that regard, stopped answering what she requested, and she kind of went off on him. And he was like, "Oh no, I got into a relationship, so I just didn't, it wasn't really appropriate." And she was like, "Well, you could have told me."
Good evening, good afternoon, depending on what part of the world you're watching from. I want to welcome you to the discussion on the sexual miseducation of black men in America. My name is A.B. Bracewell. I am the author of the upcoming book, The Sexual Miseducation of Black Men in America, which drops on March 18th. But tonight we are going to be having a discussion about this topic, and the subject for tonight is the hurt in us as black men. I'm joined by some great brothers, my brother Moses, my brother Omar Lyles. I'm going to give them a second to introduce themselves. But just to talk a little bit about what the conversation is going to be about tonight, the hurt in us, we're really going to be focusing on some of the hurt, the pain, some of the trauma that we carry around as Black men, and the way we have been conditioned to deal with that hurt, that trauma, and that pain. A lot of us have been conditioned, have been taught to seek out sexual healing opposed to seeking out real healing for some of the things that we've been through. We've been taught that the best way to overcome some of the hurt and the trauma is to be on top of a woman. So, and this all is contributed by the sexual miseducation system, as I like to call it. Things that we learn from young boys to up to adulthood on how to manage our sexuality, how to measure our manhood, and how to view sex, relationships, and women. So as I said tonight, I'm joined by some good brothers. Brother Omar, Brother Moses, thank you. Welcome for being a part of the conversation. Please introduce yourselves, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. Omar, I see your mic is off.
Okay, all right. All right, my name is Omar, Omar Lyles, that is. I'm a mental health coach, certified mental health coach, and life coach, certified dementia practitioner, Montessori dementia professional, founder and CEO of Agape Love Network, learning to deal with things that are difficult and uncomfortable in relationships. And there's so much more, but thank you for having me here on tonight.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, what's going on, family? This is Brother Moses. I'm the senior visionary of Royal Cloth Ministries and the lead pastor at School of Light Church. So everything that encompasses church and ministry, I do a little bit of all of that. So here to serve.
All right, man. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I know you was a part of one of the past conversations, Big Brother Moses, and I'll tell you that was an impactful discussion. At that time, we was talking about the impact of the music and the media in a way that it forms and touches young Black men and ourselves. Tonight, we're talking about the hurt in us. But as always, I always like to start with like a baseline or foundation. So that we could just see where each other is coming from. So I always like to start with the question, what or who was your first or your initial sexual education teachers? What was taught to you? What did you learn? What was those influences? I'd like to start with that little baseline, and then we'll get deeper into the conversation about the hurt in us. But yeah, that's my first question. What was your first sexual miseducation teachers, or who? Because it's not always a person.
So you're saying a miseducation, or just specifically how we were educated?
Exactly. How were you educated?
You know what? With me, there wasn't a specific teacher that stood over me and said, love is like this, or sex is like this. I believe that I pretty much got my education through the lens of other people. And also through media. You know, you're watching a movie and you see the lady kiss the guy and he throws her to the side. You're like, man, whoa, you know, I can't believe, you know, him and her have done that. You know, when I grew up, I'm going to do the same thing, you know, where you see the gentleman and the guy at the wedding and they're kissing, you know. And so pretty much I would say media. I haven't spoken to anybody in my immediate family about sex and love or anything of that nature. That sort of came along as I grew up later on.
Yeah, I feel that, beloved. For me, I would say porn and peers. You know what I'm saying? Just keep it a bean with you, like porn and peers. Like, you know, having young parents, I don't know if this was a thing, you know, in that time in the late 80s and early 90s or in late 80s, Yeah, my parents was young, so like we would sneak down, and they would just watch a movie like they watching a regular movie. We would try to sneak and see, and then in our peer conversations, I can remember as young as 5 and 6 and 7 years old having discussion about having sexual discussions, and we young men lying on our meat talking about we did this and that, and we 7 years old. I'm just keeping it real, beloved. So it was like there's the miseducation, because the porn, is introducing like a fantasy sexual experiences that's not rooted in reality and purpose. So that's a miseducation. And then we swapping sex stories as children. So that's a miseducation. So yeah, I'll just land there.
Yeah, and what both of you brothers says, like I know that's very common. That's very common, and it makes a lot of sense. Like Omar, you're saying you really didn't have a teacher. You didn't have anyone really instructing you, and I think that's the major problem with a lot of young black boys and black men. When we're born as a blank slate. Our parents try to teach us everything: how to walk, how to talk, how to say please and thank you, but they often skip over that lesson about sex. And then we're led or we're taught by our peers or porn or media, because the parent never sat down and actually taught us the right ways on how to manage our sexuality. So your initial education, Omar, or lack thereof, and yours, Moses, like that's like the two different roads but leading to the same path, because you end up getting taught by all the unqualified teachers, all the substitute teachers, because a lot of the times our parents, they're either not qualified or they don't take out the time to teach us the appropriate way of managing our sexuality. So we're left to the hands of our peers or some other guys in the neighborhood that don't know any much better than us. It's like the blind leading the blind. So that kind of leads me to my next question. That question was more specific and more personal, but let's speaking in general, what would you say the overall lessons or the overall teachers is for black boys and black men when it comes to sex? What do you think most of us are grabbing our lessons and learning our habits and our patterns from when it comes to our sexual habits?
Yes. So, I'm gonna let Moses.
Can you just repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, it looked like you froze for a second.
Yeah.
I was just like generally speaking. Just now we spoke personally about where we kind of learned and who taught us or what taught us. But if we can, take a more broader look, where you think that generally speaking, most of the black boys and black men out there are learning about sex, and what are they learning?
Yeah, I would say that most young men are learning about sex through social media and entertainment. So whether it's pornography or music or Instagram, like we being trained, to by society, to understand sex in a certain light and in the wrong purpose. I think in America, a lot of things is sexualized. I mean, you go to, you look at a commercial for buying a car, and a woman got to be in the bikini, in a car commercial because sex sells. And that oversaturation of sex, like it's a big part of like the miseducation of how we understand sex. or how we understand our sexuality in a healthy way, like you said earlier. So I would just say the media, entertainment, and social media world plays a huge part.
Uh, was he easy?
Any thoughts, Omar?
Oh, okay, all right. I couldn't even figure out where he had stopped in that. So yeah, so I would follow along with what he was saying. A majority, like I can't pinpoint all of America, but in today's society, most of the young men culturally are grabbing their perspectives of what sex is and what love is through media, through entertainment, through hip hop, through R&B, to the guys that they're on the streets with. The guy that's bragging about the 2 and 3 girls he hit the other night. They're pretty much grabbing it from there, and they're not really getting the education of what sex is really made for, and why sex is actually why it exists for us as human beings, and why procreation is important, and why it may not be in certain circumstances, and why it is important, to get married, you know, and think about the economics behind sex, after you have a child and things of that nature. So most of the time, they're just getting it from others instead of the nucleus, such as like your mother, your father, or someone in your immediate family.
Okay. I agree with both of you brothers. A lot of the stuff that they're learning today is coming from the outside, from stuff like the media, social media, all types of stuff, the music. Now, being that both of you brothers work closely with people, you work in the mental health field, Omar, Moses, you're the lead pastor, lead minister of the ministry. So I know in your day-to-day work with people, you see a lot of hurt, you see a lot of pain, you see people that's dealt with a lot of different types of trauma. Now, when it comes to men specifically, there's this statement, or there's actually a book. I haven't read the book, but I saw the title somewhere and it intrigued me. The title of the book was Men Don't Heal, They Hope. It said men don't heal, they hope. When you hear that statement, men don't heal, they hope, would you say that there's any truth to it? And would you and if there's any truth to it, why is that the case? And if you can tie it to like some of the pain and the trauma that we are dealing with in life, why is that the go-to?
Mm. Well, I would like to ask who wrote the book first. But I'm not sure whether it would matter where if it's a man or where if it was a lady. But I think that there's a misconception that men don't heal. Yes, because I really do believe that men can heal. I believe that healing is for everyone, whether you're a man or a female. Um, and if men are perceived as being a hoe and continues to be a hoe and not heal, then he himself is keeping himself from becoming whole again and being the man that he should be. Because any man who keeps himself from healing is pretty much a sign that he doesn't want to be taken care of. He doesn't want to take of himself spiritually, mentally, and physically. And there are men out there who don't want to do any of those things and live their life, free among themselves, among society, and things of that nature. But I do believe that men can heal, and that we're not out there uh, freely spreading ourselves around.
Yeah.
You want to add something to that, Moses?
Um, I mean, it's a lot there. You know what I'm saying? I think I'm gonna just digress at this moment. I'll hop in at a later time.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think the topic, the subject of the book, or the aim of that book was not actually saying that men aren't capable of healing. I think it was more so that a lot of men, not all men, of course, don't choose to seek out the proper healing, depending on what we're dealing with, whether it's depression, whether we have attachment issues or abandonment issues, whether it's bipolar, or we're just feeling sad, or we're just not feeling, or we're feeling inadequate. Like, a lot of the time we have been conditioned that the best way to heal from those things is to turn to a woman, opposed to turning to therapy, or turning to God, or turning to ourselves to find an answer. We look outside ourselves, and we search for like that temporary relief, that temporary feeling of sexual utopia, in order to distract us from our hurt, in order to cover up our pain, and really taking out the time to seek the healing that we need. We feel that sex is the answer to a lot of our problems, even if it's just a temporary answer. We'll often turn to that, just to distract us from the pain. But as you know, that pain always comes back. It always comes back.
Yeah, let me chime in on that. So yeah, I agree with both of you brothers said. Um, I do believe that men do that, but I would say that it's not just women. It's really lust. It's really like it's really something connected to what we think makes us a man. So it's not just having a woman, you know what I mean? But it's us having sex with a woman is really connected to something that we think validate us as a man. You know, like, so I think when we hurt, we try to we revert back to something that we think makes us more manly, because that's what's hurting us as men. Is something hurting our manhood. So it's like, let's say if somebody say some words to you and it hurts you. As a man, we don't want nobody to think that somebody's words hurt us and we got to prove we strong. So we revert back to an idea or a concept that makes us feel more manly. It's usually related to productivity or dominion and authority, right? God created us to have dominion, be fruitful. So we usually relate back to something that give us a sense of conquering or producing. So, the sexual leaning on women as a healing is really us trying to heal a broken piece of our manhood. And we lean on women to reinforce the concept of what we think make us a man. You might not even like this sister like that. You might not even like that shorty like that. But you thinking, yeah, I bet I can get her. It's a game. So I used to do that. I'm like, yo, I bet I can get her. I bet like in 2 nights I could get her. You know what I'm saying? So it's really a game I'm playing of conquering. It's not even about the woman per se, but it's about reinforcing these principles within me that make me feel more like a man. So now I'm playing games with women and adding them as notches to my belt, because that's psychologically, make it reinforcing the idea that I have dominion. And then when we finish up, you know what I'm saying? That psychologically or, unconsciously, we might not even aware, but it reinforces the idea of being fruitful because you're sowing a seed. So we start leaning on these, like, we start leaning on this to reassure our identity as a man, but we're not accomplishing anything. We're not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? And that's why a person could be, I'm sorry if I'm going long, brothers. I'll die. That's why a brother can not have a job and not have a house and not have a car, but have a mean stroke game and feel like he's a macho man. Because he's feeling fulfilled. He feel like he's fulfilling these principles of a man and measuring it in how he have relationships with multiple women. I'll land there.
A lot what you said, I agree with a lot of it. And it made me think of something that I often study in the psychology world, like defense mechanisms that we often use. And, you know, that's a concept that Sigmund Freud came up with, of course. But back then, you know, he looked at the ego defense mechanism as something different. The ego isn't what we called it today, but a lot of the stuff that Moses was talking about is a defense mechanism, like denial. We deny our emotions. We deny that we hurt. We think that we can just keep on going. We're kind of almost conditioned that way as men growing up. We're not in touch with those, to not get in touch with those vulnerable and scary feelings. So we often deny it. And one of the ways we deny those emotions of hurt, you know, and cover it up is to go seek out a woman, or we might suppress or repress those emotions. That's another ego defense mechanism in the psychology world that we often use. Or we might rationalize our feelings. So, you know, all those defense mechanisms that we use, you know, kind of to piggyback off what Moses says, we use those defense mechanisms so we don't have to deal with the real hurt, pain, embarrassment of whatever we've been through. And oftentimes it's women in the sex that we turn to as that channel or as that vessel to not deal with that stuff. So yeah, so I agree with what both of you brothers was saying. So anything you wanted to add, or I can jump to the next question?
No, not really. But I was going to say, when you brought up Freud, remember that he talked about the id and the super ego, the sexual aggressive drive to continually get sex all the time. And that's where men feel that in order to build yourself as a person, you know, what makes you whole again is how many bodies you get. You know, because I remember growing up, you know, just being around the guys and stuff. And this was before I was saved, y'all. And we'd be all in a circle and they'd be like, yeah, man, I hit this girl the other night and I did this girl the other night. And, you know, it was just always that ongoing conversation about this girl and that girl and that girl, and never about a relationship. You know, it was always from one person to the next, you know. And then outside of that circle, I would see someone who happens to be in a relationship or they was married, which is a whole different kind of thing. And they'll be like, oh, I was together for 15 and 20 years and we were together for 7 years and we had our child and this and this and this and that. It's the cultural atmosphere is very different, you know, the circle that you're around. And so me growing up and then looking at things now and being that I'm more awakened and see how the world of what love really is and how so polar opposite sex is. Sex is a beautiful thing. It's just how you use it within the confines of marriage.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up like the whole idea of like just being in a relationship, and I can think about the way I grew up around my peers and the conversations that we had. the simple fact of being in a relationship sometimes could have brought on some embarrassment, some ridicule, some shame, and some guilt. Like the guy that had a lot of women, juggling a lot of women around town, and that was champion. But if you was to do with one chick, you could be ridiculed. It was almost an embarrassing thing that you was in a relationship. So it forced you to kind of, okay, if I want to be cool, if I want to be accepted, that I got to have multiple women. And that's part of the conditioning that we have in our communities, in our culture. It's sad, but it's real for a lot of us. So I do a lot of counseling. I do a lot of relationship counseling, couples counseling, and the singles counseling as well. And a lot of the times when I'm talking to ladies, the topic of cheating, lying, and ghosting comes up. And they always ask, okay, why do men do this? Why does it happen so often? Especially with our brothers. Now, if you consider hurt, pain, trauma that we grew up in, that we saw, that we were surrounded by, that we experienced, how would you say that contributes to the way we behave specifically in relationships when it comes to cheating, or when it comes to dishonesty, or when it comes to ghosting? So that's kind of a hot topic a lot of people talk about. Like, is there a relation in the hurt that we go through in a way we deal with others in relationship? And what would that relationship be?
Okay, sure. I'll go first. Omar, you want to go or you want me to go?
Oh no, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. What comes to mind is selfishness. So I believe like multiple systems and how they function in this world, and especially in America, have conditioned Black men to be selfish. You got, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, nihilism or nihilism, right? Black men are trying to find their identity in so many different aspects, right? Whether it's Hebrew Israelite or gang banging, just trying to find a place that they can discover their identity, being fatherless, not having a real like history of your culture and your nationality. We in America, it's a big mixing pot. I might be a Hebrew, an African, a German, all in one. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So not understanding, my history, my nationality, not having a flag to represent me, not having a father, like where is my place? And then other systems like welfare, you know what I'm saying? Like, they got certain things concerning welfare in that dimension where when they help a single family, they got communities where they don't even let male figures go into that community. Otherwise, the single mom may lose her housing privileges, right? And, that Willie Litz letter, right? Just how they in that letter, just to whether people take it literally or figuratively, the same concept can be seen. And I'm not blaming any institution. I'm just saying so many different things. Even when, when men came back from war, and they didn't even have the same place in their home, because the woman, when men were at war, and the woman had to do the womanly duties and work and take care of the house while men were at war, to come home to really not really feel needed in your own home, because there's these independent super women that can do their job and yours. So it's like all of these factors kind of conditioned us to be selfish. You know what I mean? Like to not really like have a place to, so it's like it conditioned us to find value in doing our own thing. You know what I'm saying? And not feeling as responsible in the home or in these different scenarios, because we've been kind of conditioned that we don't really matter in those spaces at the same time. So I'm not trying to say that to blame that. We gotta deal with the hand that we're dealt. But when I look at that, it just seemed like that's the plight of a black man, where they just trying to figure out where they fit in society and how they can add and be fruitful. And we're kind of conditioned to not have value in all these spaces. So we just start being selfish. So that's just my thought and what I was thinking of. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, so as far as I would say the conditioning of how a lot of men are based on the influence of others. And a lot of times, a lot of trauma and healing, and a lot of trauma can be built up from the effects of their lifestyle, in terms of who they are influenced by, people who they're surrounded themselves with. And so they see themselves not generally as I would say they see themselves not generally as being responsible or holding their own selves accountable to the people within their own lives. So they themselves don't want to own up to um, living a life that's upstanding. So these kinds of things could do more hurt than solve any or fix any problem that generally a gentleman has.
Yeah, I agree with both you brothers. Moses mentioned something that sparked the thought in my mind about just the fatherlessness, and I think that's so common in the black community, but we don't always look deeper to like the emotional impact that it has on men and young men. That leaves a void in us. It leaves a void. That abandonment, that attachment issue is a void, and I think oftentimes we try to fill that void. We try to fill that empty space with things like sex or women to measure our manhood and our value. I once heard someone say that black men have very limited ways to measure our manhood. We either measure it by our bankroll, by how we perform on the ball field, or by how many women we have. And all those things, I believe, are used to fill those voids, to overcome the hurt that we feel from not having a dad or not having a positive role model in our life, because there's no one there to teach us how to be a man. And if you learn stuff from porn or from the streets or whatever, you believe that's what makes you a man. That's how you measure your manhood. And that's how you try to fill those voids of sadness and abandonment and of attachment by turning to sex. Turning to sex. I think that's something that we often do. And I think another thing about not only being a man, but being a black man, we aren't always taught on how to express our emotions in a healthy way, or we're not taught how to express our emotions at all. We are really taught to cover those things up. Don't show no hurt. Don't show any pain. Like even if you're an athlete, if you get hurt on the basketball court or on the football field, you expect to, hey, run that off, walk it off. And you don't want to show the pain because you don't want to get taken out the game. So you end up injuring yourself even more. And that also happens emotionally with us. We've been so conditioned not to show the pain, not to express the hurt, that we keep jumping from relationship to relationship or from women to women. Not only continuing to hurt ourselves or injuring ourselves, we are bleeding on other people and we're hurting them as well. So that's my thoughts. I agree with both of you brothers on the points that you said on how this pain and how this hurt often leads to the lies and the cheating and things of that nature.
Yeah, I just want to say something real quick.
Definitely.
Is that a lot of times, even if the young man or the boy doesn't have the father, but even when he has their father or an older sibling in their life, they sort of mimic the lifestyle of them, because the father or whoever's close to them, they see them visibly in their household with women going back and forth, through the doors of their house. They'll see their father with this lady and with that lady and this lady and this lady. So it becomes normalized, and they'll begin to mimic that and saying, oh, having more than one woman is fine. Having more than one woman is good, and so they begin to internalize that, and it becomes more natural to them. So cheating becomes normalized in their life. And so when the rubber hits the road, if someone decided to want to get into a relationship with them, they don't know how to handle it because they're so used to the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that, bro. Thanks for sharing that. And both of your brothers' point is so deep because it shows why men ghost and cheat, because we won't admit it, but we have a legitimate fear of commitment, and we overshadow that fear with like machismo, you know what I'm saying, and bravado, like, nah, I'm strong, I'm good. But we really have a deep fear because it's things within us that we don't know how to deal with, and our response is to just isolate and go within ourselves and shut down. So a lot of that ghosting is, and cheating is just like, even when I examine myself, like, it really was just a fear of not even knowing how to commit, not even knowing how to deal with things. And because a lot of that would make me deal with stuff that I don't want to deal with in myself. You know what I mean? Like the fear, or the anger, or I would have to admit it. So I'd rather just be cool and act like it don't matter and I don't care. We play that type of game. So I like what you guys said. It's good stuff,
Yeah, that's a part of the denial game that we play. We act like things don't bother us, nothing matters. When deep inside, we really hurting, but we end up projecting it on someone else or somewhere else. And oftentimes it's in our relationships we project that hurt on. But so we discussed a lot about the causes, the reasons of the hurt in us, and how it impacts ourselves, how it impacts women, how it impacts the community in general. Now, I want to kind of pivot the conversation a little bit and talk about, so what do we do about this? How do we teach the next generation of men to properly heal and deal with their feelings or their hurt and their pain, so they don't turn to sexual healing in order to feel better? So what would you tell the next generation of men that's coming up behind us on what to do, how to properly manage those emotions?
Yeah. One of my convictions is to create safe spaces for people, especially men. You know what I'm saying? Like, create safe spaces, because we have a lot of battles. We have so many battles, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, racially. We have so many battles and so many battle wounds and so many battle scars and armors dented up and dented shields. And we don't ever take the armor off. You know what I'm saying? We don't have anywhere to take it off and get our wounds cleaned up. So I think for me, one conviction is just to create safe spaces for men. Like, I know you brothers probably do the same exact thing. You know what I mean? Whereas they feel comfortable enough to really share their heart without them looking at, like, lesser than a man or weak or soft, and actually giving them actionable steps to really grieve things. I think grieving is an art that most people don't understand or know how to do it. We just think of grief as like an emotional thing, but grieving is really just a process of dealing with trauma. And I know you guys are familiar with the stages of grief and all of that. And it seemed like whatever stage you get stuck in is like you just learn how to deal with trauma or not deal with trauma every time, and that becomes your trigger, whether it's denial or anger or, you know, whatever the stages is. I think one of the things that men deal with a lot is anger. And like that's why I think about being a safe space for brothers, because the scriptures say, fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath.
Mhm.
And we're not provoking them to wrath like outbursts, but it's an internal frustration that they harbor just by a father not being present. Is not even him being abusive. Just by him not being present, a resident anger or frustration abides on the inside. And James 1:20 says that wrath worketh doesn't produce the righteousness of God. And if you do a study on that word wrath, it means like a settled anger that comes from consistent opposition. So it's like this anger, this settled anger and frustration that men harbor inside of them. They can smile and play basketball, but you know that we harbor this inner frustration that doesn't produce righteousness, and it comes from constant opposition. So think about that. You have this frustration inside from having this constant warfare and opposition on all sides. You know, you go to school, you battling. You walk home from school, you might have to fight or defend yourself. You go home and you live in the hood and y'all always like ridiculing each other. Like, where is your place of safety? That's what the father's supposed to do. Create the safety for you to discover who you are and discover purpose and discover identity. You know what I'm saying? So when I look at that, the father creates a realm of safety where you're not always in opposition. You're not always fighting. You know what I mean? And I feel like men really need that safe spot for them to heal, because we got enough battles just being black men in America. Then we believers. Then we, you know what I'm saying? Then we got our own personal struggles. There's so many warfares. Now, I may not be someone's personal father, but we create just spaces where people can be fathered and they can develop and grow and like mature in certain areas where we could be 40 years old and have, you know, emotional immaturity. So I know I'm being long-winded and I apologize, man, but you know, even Jesus needed a father. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, I'm getting spiritual, but
You good,
like
brother. You good,
Jesus
brother.
was the son of God, but Joseph fathered him. Like Joseph covered him. Joseph created safety for him to grow and mature. And I say that because, like, think about that. Joseph took the responsibility to create safety for someone that didn't know their father at the time. And I feel like more men like us, you know, just creating that safety, you know, for people that didn't have brothers that didn't have a father or didn't have a way to mature and develop in a safe environment like Joseph created for Jesus. So I'll land there. I'm sorry. I'll probably.
No need to apologize, brother. That's good stuff.
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with Moses, you know, having safe spaces, you know, where men could actually fellowship and talk to one another and speak about issues in their personal life, where if there's any trauma or any issues, where if it's marital issues or where it's about divorce or education, career-wise, or what you want to do in your life, growth and skills and things of that particular nature. All those things encompass safe spaces where men can grow and to develop themselves, you know. And not only that, I believe that the church should also be an integral part of the spiritual part to where men could actually grow as well spiritually, because you need that. You need a prayer life, and you're going to need God in the midst of all that to get you to where you want to go in life. And so, if you don't have those tools of things around you, well, not things, but people, I would say, it would stunt your growth, and men really need that, from childhood and up. Now, when I was younger, there was very few places, we grew up in the 80s. There was very few places where um, there were circles where men could actually go. I was in the Boy Scouts and I was a Cub Scout. It wasn't that much of that in there, but you had something, you know, to go to, with a lot of other boys and stuff like that on a positive note. You had the Boys and Girls Club, but sometimes all boys didn't live in the inner city. So there wasn't a boys club around, but now there's a lot of more mentoring organizations that's out there. And so that's what a lot of men need. They need a lot of mentorship, and not just young boys and not just teenagers. Men need to be mentored by other men. We need peer mentorship. We need other brothers that's going to surround us and that's going to help build us up. And that's what we really need today.
Yeah, I think all of us are in alignment with the way that we're thinking as far as creating these safe spaces so that men can talk about their hurt. I think one important, or I should say 3 important parts as far as creating these safe spaces is really trying to normalize the fact that we hurt as well, that we have pain, that we deal with guilt and we deal with abandonment and attachment and depression. I think in our Black community, especially for men, we often look at that as weak, and we deny that we go through those things. So we think that is not normal. So we keep it to ourselves. I think if we learn to tell other brothers, like, listen, share our stories. I've been through the same thing. I've dealt with the same thing. Or, I had a brother that dealt with the same thing. Like, you're not weird. You're not strange because you're dealing with these emotional struggles. Because we definitely got to normalize this stuff, and we have to be non-judgmental. We can't pass judgment. We got to allow men to express what they've been through, express what they're dealing with, because that's the only way they'll feel more open to be transparent. How we are as men, if we feel like we're being judged or if we feel like we're being criticized, we often or quickly go back into our cave. We quickly like, okay, but this is not a safe space for me to share. So I'm not going to share this. So we definitely have to create a non-judgmental environment for men to share their kind of hurt, so they don't turn to sex and women to deal with their hurt. Because I think that happens a lot. And that takes me to that last word of nurturing. I think men, we lack that nurturing part. I know we often look at it as a woman's thing to be nurturing, but a man has it in him to nurture another man as well. We often try to pressure young men or men in general to get better. We like to point out all that you're doing wrong, hoping that they're going to get it right. But we rarely know how to nurture someone into health or nurture someone into improvement. So we definitely have to do a better job in trying to nurture each other to create those safe spaces, so that they're able to feel comfortable enough to share what they're going through, to share their hurt and their pain. So like I said, I think we're on the same page when it comes to creating these safe spaces. I don't think there's enough, but I think this conversations like this is definitely a start, or a continuation, because I know a lot of you brothers are already doing stuff like this in your own personal lives, and you're part of organizations that are doing stuff like this. So this is just a continuation of what y'all brothers are already doing. So that's my thought on that piece. I'm not trying to keep you brothers too long, but if you have any last minute thoughts on this topic of the hurt in us, and how it impacts us as Black men, and how it impacts our community, our relationships in general, And just give your last thoughts. Tell the people where they can follow you, where they can find you, or what you got coming up. Just share with those that's watching now, or those that's gonna watch the replay.
Yeah. My last thought I would say is that I really think that there's a strong connection between anger and how men use sex to heal. Um, I never really realized the connection between it before, but I have, as of the last year or so, realized it's a strong connection between anger and sex. It seemed like anger carries a vengeance, and like it's like, oh, for a brother get angry, well, I'll just go mess with another chick, bump you. You know what I'm saying? Almost in a vengeful way, but also in a way to create fairness. A lot of anger is rooted in injustice. We haven't been done fair. This isn't right. This isn't fair. And us as black men might face a lot of that, feeling like things aren't fair for us, and we harbor that anger, and we might use sex to try to balance things out, right? So I think that if brothers, especially black men, if we can really process some of the injustices that we faced in our lives, whether we didn't have this or we grew up in the hood, or the neighbor across the street had everything and we had nothing, or we weren't preferred by people, or we experienced racism, or whatever it is, whatever the injustice is, that we can work through that. I think we can be in a healthier place to not feel like we're going to use sex to heal. That's my final thought. Oh, and I'm not doing too much right now. I'm like in student mode. So I'm doing a lot of learning. I'm in student mode, but if anybody wanted to find out things I'm doing, you could go to School of Light page on Facebook, or you go to my personal page, Moses Griffin, and check me out. And whatever I'm doing, I definitely post those things there. Thanks for having me on, bro.
Man, thank you, brother.
Hmm. My last point is that we need to come together and be an active participant in society for the development and help of young black men. And not just young black men. I'm going to speak about for men all over, even though we're speaking to mostly men of color. But people need help, and we need to come together and pray for our brothers and get out there and start helping them before it's too late, because too many of them are dying. There are a lot of diseases, sexually transmitted diseases, and people are dying from AIDS and other transmitted diseases. So we really, really need to get together and educate them a lot more. Even us coming together as brothers to just bond with one another, and more than anything, and not just to just educate and mentor. People just need bondmanship and they need fellowship. So if you're out there, do not hesitate, to contact me as well. You can look through me at Omar Lyles, the life coach, .net, or through Agape Love Network, .net. Those are the things that you can contact me with as well.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Just the sexual miseducation of black men in America. I thank you, brothers, for joining. As I said in the beginning, this conversation is to spark some awareness of what we're going through. It is also to let you guys know that the book is coming out. The book is coming out on March 18th. So the main purpose of me writing this book was to help black men to explore like the emotional, the psychological, the relational, behavioral impact that our sexual miseducation has had on us. A lot of what we've been speaking about today, the book is written to help young men and men in general figure out real ways of measuring their manhood. A lot of us been taught the measurement of a manhood is judged by the amount of women we sleep with or how well we perform in the bedroom. But the goal is to teach men real ways to value and measure their manhood. And there's also to help parents. If you got a son, if you got a nephew, if you got a little cousin, I want to help them and teach them how to transition from that position of prince into king. So the book drops on March 18th, which is Saturday. You'll be able to find it on Amazon. You'll be able to find it on my website, readyforrelationship.com, or you can just hit me in my inbox and I'll get you a signed copy. Brother Moses or the Omar, just realized that we got kind of a Jersey connection on here. I just realized that we 3 brothers from Jersey, so I feel like I'm at home. I appreciate y'all for joining me. Just feeding the people with all your knowledge, all your wisdom, and I'm sure someone's gonna watch the replay and get a lot from this. So once again, thank you guys for watching. Please follow these brothers, follow me, and we'll stay connected. Have a good night.
All right, brothers. Blessings, man. Love y'all.
Love you, bro.